Welcome to the Trader, a Traitors podcast, a Spotify top 10 podcast. My name's Matthew. I'm a writer working in TV development, and I am a 100% faithful fan of the multi-award winning hit TV competition series, The Traitors. Most episodes of the podcast deep dive into individual episodes of the show from around the world, but The Trader also features interviews with contestants from the shows. In fact, you could go back and listen to interviews I've done with cast members from UK 1 and 2, US Season 1, Australia 1 and 2, and The Traitors Canada. For now, I'm continuing my coverage of The Traitors New Zealand Season 2 with the third of our contestant interviews. Let's find out who is joining us this time. Welcome to the podcast, Donna. How are you doing today, Donna?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm so stoked to be on here and having a chat with you. It's exciting.
Yeah, and am I correct in thinking this is your first podcast interview?
This is definitely my first podcast, so be nice. Well, maybe not too nice, but
I will. I promise I'll be nice. And what an exclusive for the podcast! I'm super excited. So thank you for joining us. Um, I have lots of questions. I mostly from me. I have quite a few questions for you from listeners on social media. So we've got a lot to dive into. Before we get there, we're going to carry on the podcast tradition and play the Trader Traitor. The Trader Traitor is a game within a podcast about a game. The mission for Dawn and I from here on in is to tell a lie to one another at some point during our conversation. The lie has to be a fabrication or a made up fact, big or small, about the traitors or about ourselves or anything else. For example, I could lie to Donna and say that I only have three questions written down to ask her, when the truth is I have a page and a half of detailed small print questions I'm desperate to get to the bottom of. However, my lie couldn't be that I thought Joe was the best faithful in the game when my real feelings are that Joe probably wasn't the best faithful in the game. I'm being trying to be very nice here. And that would be a fake opinion. So we're looking for fake facts rather than fake thoughts and feelings. Donna, are you ready to be a traitor this time around and deceive me?
I will give it my best shot.
Great, that's what I like to hear. And our game of the Trader Traitor begins now. So, Donna, you on Instagram, you sent me a question for you. Kind of, you said you'd love to tell people why you did the show in the first place because they sort of didn't really show that. I think maybe towards like the last couple of episodes we got a little bit of backstory, but take the floor and tell us what should we know about your motivation? Why did you apply to be on the Traitors?
Yes, well, it is all due to my lovely husband. So before I came into the show, I didn't actually even really know about the show too much. Unlike a lot of the other contestants who were super fans and follow it and watch all of the episodes and shows around the world, I hadn't even watched season one of New Zealand. And I recently turned 40. And I had a list of 40 things that I wanted to do before I turned 40. And my husband asked for just one spot on the list. And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. And he goes, right, you're applying for this show. I'm like, what is it? He goes, you're applying for the show. So there we go. I applied for the Traitors New Zealand, sent in my 1 minute video, did a lot of the interviews, got through, got the phone call to say that I'd made it. And my husband apologized to me because he didn't think that I was actually going to step out of my comfort zone and give it a go. So that's why I did the show
Okay, I see. And when was your birthday?
in March.
Okay, I turned 40 in July, so we're pretty close. Uh,
Yeah.
can I ask you to solve a very ridiculous mystery for just for me personally? So, um, in episode one, when the contestants had just met one another and you're in the cars on the way to the house, you told Jane that you recognized her, and I couldn't quite
Yes.
catch what you said. So how did you recognize Jane?
I work for local government in Tauranga, and as I was sitting there, when I looked at her, I thought, I've seen her around the buildings. And sure enough, as we then went through it, we work for the same company, work for the same Toronto City Council, and had seen her around. And so I was very surprised to see her in the car sitting right there.
Yeah. And Jane didn't tell anybody until the end of the season that she had been a police officer. Do you think, I don't, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. Do you think she panicked when you said you recognized her and she thought, oh, I don't want someone to know about who I am?
I think, to be honest, she was just playing her great game, and I think she just probably wanted to keep that hidden so that we didn't automatically suspect that she was going to be this great detective and just suss us all out if we were traitors.
Yeah. Now, I'm moving forward a little bit through the episodes. In the episode 3 task, when you were in the church, you were the only
Yes.
player who ended up with a silver bar at the end. Now, I reckon that mission was quite a difficult one. So, like, what did you you experienced it differently from most of the other players who were all outside trying to decide who had been voted for particular titles. What did you think of what they were all having to do? Did you think it was tough?
To be honest, I was in that church and we were singing Amazing Grace, and then we were singing whatever song they try to make us sing that none of us had any idea on. And we had no idea what was going on around us. People were running inside the church and then grabbing people and taking them away. And we had to sit through whole Widowmoo's funeral. So we actually had no idea what was going on or what they were doing or anything. We were just sitting there partaking in the funeral. And then when it got to the end and they said, the three that are left in the church, let's see if you've been left money in the will. I was like, well, that was an easy mission. I had to sit here the whole time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they definitely got the raw side of that deal, whereas I just
Yeah.
had to sit there, sometimes sing, sometimes had to, get up and speak about Winamu, and it was great.
Yeah, not too bad. And if he had selected you for one of those titles, like quietest, sweetest, most trustworthy, which one do you think you might have been in the running for?
Winamu and I connected on day one. So from day one, when we were both there, we made a connection, and he was one of my trusted from day one. So for me, I would have liked to hope that he would have put most trustworthy against my name.
Yeah, yeah. That would be that's a nice one. That's a good one to get.
Yeah, let's not go for most shadiest.
And
Sorry, Mike.
oh, Mike. And in that same episode, there ends up being quite a bit of heat between you and Bree at the round table, and then sort of beyond the round table.
Yes.
So, can you clear things up for us? Because Bree reckons that you said that she should watch her back. What was going on? What really happened there?
Yeah, so at the breakfast table that morning when Bree had come in, I did have a conversation with Bree, but I said to Bree that there was heat going to be coming on her. And clearly she was just in this maybe panic mode or this different mode of trying to think different things. And so she then turned it around to say that, she needed to watch her back. I'd said, there was heat on you because I was just giving her heads up on that. I didn't actually think she was a traitor.
Yeah.
It was just more of like a heads up. So yeah, that banishment table was an exciting night.
I mean, and eventually, Bree wasn't around for a lot longer after that. But do you think he sort of cleared things up between you and figured things out?
Yeah, and I definitely, when I was watching the show back, I had to laugh when she came in to have a chat with me, and I was like, nah, not tonight, not going to talk to you. Thankfully, then they also did show in my interview my reasonings as because if I was going to have a conversation with her right then, that it would not have been a mature conversation at all. And I would have acted like a 2-year-old. But we did have a moment and had a chat and cleared things up. And I actually really like Brie, and we're still in touch today as well.
Oh, that's good. Nice to hear.
Yeah.
And a couple of episodes later, then, episode 5, after Andrew had been banished, and Andrew was just on the podcast a couple of days ago. You were really upset, and maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me. It seemed to be around this time that your attention turned towards Noel. I think because Noel had been on sort of the death roll with Andrew. So a couple of listeners have of course sent in questions about this. So I have one from Diana is walking is the username. This is on Instagram. And Diana, if that's her real name, says, "Why were you so certain on Noel? Or was it a plan to distract others so the traitors kept you in?" And another user called Slim Shannon has also just asked. Um, no, I take it back. Slim Shannon has asked a different question that I'm going to save for later. So yes, Diana's asking, yeah, what we're all thinking. What was it about Noel that you were so sure about, or was that all a big facade?
No, to be honest, I was just so adamant and so vision tunnel on the fact that I truly believed that the traders would have put up a trader of their own. And at the breakfast before Noel had come through or Bree, I had said to everyone in the room, whoever comes through the door is a trader, whether it was
Yeah,
Noel or where it's Bree. Noel comes in my head, I'm like, damn, Bree's gone. I'm like, Noel's a trader.
yeah,
It wasn't any game plan. I wish it was. Maybe it turned to more of a game plan later, but definitely in those next couple of episodes, I was just hard stuck on no, I needed answers. I'm someone in life who needs answers, and I will do what I can to get them.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
yes.
And in the following episode, after the mission, alongside Stephen, Kat, and Jane, you had the chance to, as a group, you had to decide whether to have a murder or a banishment that night. And you all opted for banishment. And Stephen then came under a lot of fire. In fact, it's probably what cost him his place in the game because he asked the rest of you if you could have like, should you just think about it for a moment. I thought Stephen was perfectly reasonable asking this. Why did everyone give him such a hard time about not immediately wanting to banish?
Yeah, that's when you watch it back, we really did just jump at that. I think for me, and it's funny because at work we have different colors of our personalities, and I'm a red personality, so I do jump straight to it. I don't need detail. I get things done, and I think my mind was just like, for me, there was no choice. So I straight away was like banish. Probably didn't listen to the whole thing that we had to have banishing a trader if we wanted to actually do it. And then Kat was adamant. Kat was absolutely adamant that Stephen was a traitor. And then, of course, now that we know Jane was a traitor, of course she was going to jump on that as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
I wanted to vote with them. I wanted to be seen as a, unity on that. So, yes, Stephen definitely was right in asking for a few minutes to have time to think. And no, we were jump gun straight
yeah,
away. And then everyone said the same, right? There was only a couple of people who said that, yeah, Stephen could have a couple of seconds to think about it. Everyone else was saying they would have done the same, and straight away, there was no choice.
yeah. That's interesting what you're saying about the sort of red personality, because I guess that matches what
Yeah.
you just said about Noel, that you sort of
Yeah.
had an idea about it, made a decision and stuck to it. And I know lots of people sort of made fun and were saying, "Oh, Donna, let it go." But at the same time, I think also
Mm-hmm.
viewers complain when the opposite happens. We talk a lot on the show about recency bias, and a lot of players in different seasons of the Traitors forget things so easily and just change their
Yeah.
minds. And so you at least were sort of saying, well, no, we had this idea about no, why let's not forget it. So I don't think that's a terrible thing.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think I needed to stick on Noel because if we go back to the episode 2 for a minute, Bailey and I voted Jane. So on episode 2, we voted Jane. We were
Hmm.
trying to get people to see all of that, and people moved on so fast from Jane after the whole
Yeah,
Jane Terry. They just went on, and so I was like, well, okay, everyone's moving on so fast, and I'm like, stick to your guns, Donna. Don't let Noel disappear again, just like Jane disappeared. Don't let it
yeah, yeah.
happen. So yes, but I definitely do know that, every second episode reverting back to Noel, probably not the finest thing, but for me, I couldn't follow the crowd. I couldn't follow everyone. For example, Molly.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
couldn't vote Molly, so I voted Noel. I couldn't vote her. I trusted her. So, yeah,
sure.
sometimes then it became a tactic.
And soon after this point, one banishment where you didn't vote for Noel was when you successfully voted for Mike and you banished a real traitor. I had Mike on the podcast last week and he
Yeah.
was reflecting a lot on his time as a traitor and how he played the game. What was it that made you suspect Mike on that episode and switch from Noel?
Mike, I think for a lot of us, Mike's behavior after the hill challenge,
Yeah.
when he was like, "Well, I didn't take a shield," we're all like, "Why would you say that?" Like, you're just putting yourself, if you're not a trader, you're just putting yourself up to let the traders know that they can kill you tonight because, they can murder you. Um, yeah, I think it was just a change.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Mike sort of realizes that now. Has a few regrets about things that he did. This might be a good point then to discuss Bailey because it was around this
Yeah.
time she was recruited, and this is I thought one of the questions earlier was about Noel. Actually, it was about this. So Slim
Yeah.
Shane asked, "Did you ever suspect Bailey?" And then there's another user, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this. So it's spelled SONHOANG 2975. That is their username. This is on Instagram. Asks, how close was your friendship bonding with Bailey in the game, and when did it start? So yeah, maybe you could tell us about your friendship with Bailey and if you ever did have doubts about her.
Yeah. So I can go right back to the start. Day one, day two, Molly Bailey and Widemu and Whitney, they were my people. They were the
Mm,
people that I connected with straight away. And from then, they probably didn't show it as much, mine and Bailey's, until after Bailey had become the trader, but we spent most of our time together.
yeah,
So for me, I don't generally make really quick connections people, but when you're in a pressure cooker and when you're in this wild journey in this wild game, you have to be able to connect. And Bailey and I did right from the very start. We made it known to people that we trusted each other 100%. You can never trust anyone 100%. And Bailey is amazing. She really is. And so being able to connect with her from the start and then through all of the episodes, when we both were upset or we both were, frustrated, we would go to each other straight away. As soon as we
yeah,
left that management table, as soon as we left breakfast, as soon as we left anything, we would go and talk to each other. So
yeah,
yeah, from the start. Did I ever suspect her? I definitely started to have questions around why I was there.
yeah,
When I was watching back, I realized then that Bailey kind of used those same words as what I had said to her in that thing. She then turned it around and was questioning why she was there. And I think that probably was amazing gameplay from her because then it took it. I was like, oh, no, actually, she thinks I'm the trader. I'm not the trader. Like I think in my head. And so if only I'd done a Noel on her and kept on that part, maybe different. But yeah, and I think for me, my heart at times would take over from my head.
yeah,
And you vote with your heart, you have the emotions, rather than your head and your logic.
yeah. And I'll ask you a little bit more about Bailey, how the game ended
Yeah,
in a while. So we'll get there.
yeah,
I do have another question about a mission that I'm hoping you could clear up, and it sort of involves Bailey as well. It was the mission in the barn when you were all kidnapped and tied up. You were standing beside Bailey when she realized she had this extra padlock key that she shouldn't have had, and she throws it on the floor without telling anyone. Some viewers, including me, find this mission a bit confusing. We weren't quite sure what you were allowed to do or not allowed to do.
yeah.
Were you not supposed to speak to the remaining players still tied up after you've been freed? Once you stabbed the doll, were you kind of supposed to just stand at the side and not be involved anymore?
Yeah, so once you had been, so at the start you had to try and your key that you had wasn't the one in front of you. So you had to get your key from in front of you and you had to find out whose it was. For me, Siali had got the key first and I was the first unlocked.
Yeah,
So it was then really hard because yeah, you then had to step aside and you then weren't allowed to help, you weren't allowed to say anything, you weren't allowed to do anything with the other players, and you kind of had to be watching on and then just hoping that they weren't going to stab you. So it was a really interesting mission. And kind of feeling helpless, and you just want to go and help with the keys and you want to go and help unlock people, but you just couldn't.
Yeah. That clarifies things then, because yeah, I was confused why she was being so surreptitious about it, but I guess she wasn't
Yeah.
really supposed to be getting involved, so
No,
that
and
makes
it wasn't
sense.
until we realized that she had the key and we were like, what can we do? Are we allowed to throw it back in? No, we're allowed, and then we lost it. And then we had to go hunting for it and find it because we had literally lost it. It was dropped, thought it was thrown back in, and yeah, couldn't just walk back over and give the key. There was like a rope around the circle, and you
Okay.
weren't allowed over that. Mhm.
Okay. And as well as Bailey, you also had an interesting relationship with Joe. On one
Yeah.
hand, it seemed like you really genuinely cared about him and you were looking out for him. And on the other hand, we saw you both really suspect one another of being traitors at some point. And I think voting for one another. I'm not sure if Joe voted for you.
Yeah. No,
Can,
Joe voted for himself and I voted for
oh,
Joe.
of course,
Yeah.
yes. Could you maybe you could tell us a bit more about your friendship with Joe and how you guys connected?
Yeah, I had a lot of time for Joe. Joe was chaotic. He definitely brought the drama. He brought the fun. And every day turning up, he would have something to say at breakfast that would entertain us all. Or he would tell us about some values or some integrity or just, where he's come from and what he was doing. And then there was the one day, and I remember it so clearly, he was just silent. It just complete change. And it was after there'd been a recruitment. Also, we thought there'd been a recruitment.
Hmm.
And so when I go to check on him, it was just this cold shoulder. And I was like, I'm generally just doing a check in you because I actually care about you. And he does the cold shoulder back to me. And I'm like, yeah, that's how Brie must have felt when I did it to Brie. Sorry, Brie. And then at the table that night, he was just like, I thought you were a traitor. And I was like, okay. But wouldn't say anything about it or why. And then, to be honest, when he voted for himself, that hurt. I was like, wow. And I think my facials in that episode were like, huh? I'm like, well, I feel like a dick now because I'm about to turn your name over and you've just voted for yourself. But as soon as that had happened and they did air this part, we had a hug and we talked. And, he told me to continue to be strong and he apologized and it was okay. Yeah, he definitely brought the drama and the chaoticness, and everyone needs a Joe in their life. We've actually joked since because of all the comments out there on, online, the keyboard warriors. Me and Joe would happily take the worst faithfuls as people called us together. We've got that title together, and we like it.
If you're definitely not the worst faithfuls, and if you've seen some other series like Australia season two, you're absolutely
Yeah.
fine. Um, and did Joe ever? Why did he vote for himself that night? Was it, had he just kind of given up? What did he? How did he
Yeah,
explain
so
it afterwards?
that day was a hard day for him, and because I think everything that had happened, he was feeling lost, he was feeling clueless, he felt as though he wasn't getting the game. He just didn't know, he didn't feel himself anymore, and so I don't know, maybe it was a tactic, maybe it was a game tactic, because then everyone completely backed off and was just leaving him alone. And then maybe it was I don't know. We haven't talked about it since, but maybe it was a game tactic.
Hmm. I'll have to try and get Joe on the podcast and ask him all about it.
Yeah.
We're reaching the end of the season now. So, in episode 11, Bailey voted for you at the round table. Did you have any suspicion that that vote was coming? How did it feel to have Bailey write down your name at that point?
I had no idea that Bailey would be writing my name. I was sitting there and I remember it so clearly. I was like staring her down at the table, going, huh? Like, but she was already defeated. And when she turned my name over, I was like, okay. I'm like, she's just doing this for Noel. That's what I thought, that she was
Mm,
just backing Noel in this moment. And going with that. But that definitely took me from surprise. I wasn't surprised about Noel, but definitely Bailey writing my name. I was genuinely surprised by it.
yeah. And did it give you any doubt that maybe she was a traitor, or was it just the null explanation?
No, I thought again that she thought that I was a traitor,
Hmm.
and that didn't sit well with me, and I didn't like it.
Well, I bet, yeah. It was, especially when you don't see it coming.
Yeah.
It must be a real shock in that moment, yeah.
Mm-mm.
In the finale mission, you you had to dissect a mouse. Um,
Yes.
I couldn't have done it. I just couldn't. How did you? And you seemed very calm about it. Like you were in control. Like you seemed fine on that mission. How was that?
I loved it. I absolutely surprised myself. And but then on the other hand, I didn't because I'm a sewer. And
Mm,
so I already know how to do stitching and to sew. So I was like, okay, if I have to stitch this mouse back up, that's
yeah,
okay. And when I was doing it, it took me back to my school days of when I was doing, like chemistry and biology.
yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay. But there was one part that really was disgusting. It was when, apologies to anyone who doesn't like this kind of stuff, but the intestines popped back up. So I'd put them all back in, and as I was stitching away, the intestines popped back up through the mouth, and I had to put them back in to then keep stitching away. So, to be honest, I think I got the easiest of them all, but a lot of people have told me that they couldn't have done it and that it was disgusting. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I need to change careers.
Yeah, yeah. You should team up with Whitney and become like a mortician.
Yes. Whitney, do you have a job for me?
Well, well done.
Sorry, Ken and Jeff. I don't really want to leave you.
Now we're reaching, the very
Yeah.
intense climax of the show. How throughout that day or in the run up to the end game, how many times did you change your mind, if you changed your mind at all? Were you dead set about who you were going to vote for?
Oh, I think a lot of people could see the expressions of my face in that whole time. So when we were at the banishment table, no problem invading for Ciali. That didn't, sorry, Ciali, but that, that kind of didn't bother me. That
Hmm.
was just, this is fine, this is okay. That was all good. And then when I was safe and we were like, okay, and then we had to go down to the fire pit and go stand down there, we left the banishment table, went straight out there and straight into that area. And in my head, I was like, am I absolutely certain of what I want to do? And I didn't. Like, there was definitely these moments of back and forth. Apologies, Joe, but I was, because I think of the chaoticness and all of that stuff, I was really unsure about Joe.
Yeah.
So again, writing Joe's name down, like it absolutely sucked, but I did it. And then when I decided to, you know, throw in the thing to say banish again, I was like, what am I doing? I literally could be throwing in to say end game. So there
Yeah.
was definitely something in me. And then it really, really just took over. I went into this moment of going, I have to make a decision now because, even if the others chose to end game, I chose not to.
Yeah.
So in that moment, that's when my heart took over.
Yeah.
So it was hard. It was really tough. And Jason he's an absolutely amazing, amazing guy. He is incredible. And thankfully I'm still in a lot of, still in touch with him now. He actually only lives about 15 minutes from me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely did go back and forth in my mind a couple of times. And I think the viewers, if they watched it again, could probably tell when I was changing the opinion in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that mean then that you did consider voting for Bailey at any point?
Yeah, I think I think again it is one of those hard things because as much as even if I considered it, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Um, whether that's right or wrong or whatever it is, on reflection, I think I would rather be betrayed than be the betrayal.
Yeah.
And um, even if there was a 10-15% chance that she was a traitor in my head or a faithful, like I wanted to be at the end with Bailey. And actually, it was funny because when I was reflecting back on the show, there was a moment that they didn't show in the cars when it was me, Jason, Bailey. We were in the car
Hmm.
and we were joking about the three of us being at the end together. And Jason was just like, if either one of you are a traitor, watch out. You and so it's kind of funny that the three of us were at the end together.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was definitely hard. I did doubt myself, but then I'd made a promise to myself, and I just couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reveal, when Bailey has to tell you that she is a traitor,
Yeah,
it's such a tough watch. I mean, obviously I love the show and I love the excitement and the drama and the
yeah,
conflict, but
yeah,
I've really felt you looked so heartbroken, and I'd
yeah,
also I was happy as a viewer that the Bailey the traitor had won, but I felt so
yeah.
terrible for you as well. Is it tough for you to watch that scene? How do you feel about it all now that time has passed?
Yeah, so definitely glad that we had a little bit of time between when it actually happened to then doing it. To be honest, didn't really expect all of the emotions to come flooding back when I watched the episode.
Mm.
I chose to I had just got actually back from a trip on the Monday. So when they were released, I had literally just got off a plane and came home. And we were thinking about doing, like a big get together and a big viewing and all of that to be around people. And I kind of wish I did because a lot of my friends were like, oh, you've won because you didn't organize anything. And so, you just want to be away from us all. And they literally thought that I'd won it
Hmm.
and just because of how it was. And I watched it at home with my husband, and I'm really glad that I did because, not going to lie, it wasn't a pretty watch. I was watching it and it took me back into those moments, and, all the emotions and all of that stuff came back. And as I was watching it, even when I was looking at my face, I was like, man, that's hard to watch. That's
Hmm.
tough. Yeah, but really thankful for the support and definitely glad that time has passed. So you can process it. And then I watched it again. And then I watched it again. So I watched the ending three times. But it helps.
Yeah.
It definitely helps, like rewatching it. And then I was laughing. So,
Yeah.
started with the flood of emotions to then actually being just laughing at because it was a game and it was an amazing experience. Yeah, definitely a tough watch. And that is what I've heard from a lot of people. And a lot of people have watched, reached out to me to go, really glad that, like a trader won and that Bailey won. Really felt for you though, because you could tell that it was true devastation
Mm.
and heartbreak that Bailey actually wasn't a faithful.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting to hear that you watched it several times, because I think
Yeah.
that's kind of human nature though, to go over difficult memories. And I think the more that you do, the more you just sort of calm down about it, and you
Yeah.
learn to just not be as upset so much every time. So I guess that's normal to do that. Um, in fact, we were talking there about the time between filming and it being on air. When did the show film?
We filmed back in April.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, we filmed in April and it was in Timaru and it was still so cold. It was really cold still. Hence where I was actually going to get my Smurf beanie out. I was reading the spin-off articles and they were like mocking me for my beanie that I wore in a couple of the shows because it had like the little pink hat. I was going to like wear it, take me back in time. But it was really cold. But yeah, it was in April.
Yeah, it's not really that long ago. That's quite a quick turnaround from
Yeah,
filming to all being edited and out there. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, what what was the fallout after, the game ends,
yeah.
Bailey's won, it's over, stop filming. Did you get the chance to speak to the other contestants who were still there? Do you disappear and go home and you don't see Bailey? Is there any chance to sort of talk things out after the end game?
So so we left and then we all went back up into the house.
Mhm.
And I saw Jason and I saw Joe and Ciali, and then Bailey had been going off to interviews, and then I went straight into interview. I actually said, go put me in an interview now so people can see my raw emotion. They can see me being vulnerable. For me, I learned a lot of lessons in being vulnerable. So I'm not actually vulnerable normally.
Yeah.
I'm not actually, but I learned a lot from the show. And so I didn't really get a chance that night to talk it through or to do anything. All I knew was that I actually wanted to give Bailey a hug, just to also let her know that, although what just happened absolutely sucked, like she is an awesome person.
Yeah.
And my connection with her was real. Very glad that she was only a trader for, like the last 3, 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Definitely made a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah.
But no, didn't really get a chance to talk it through in that night.
Yeah. But it's good to hear that, you were able to, I guess, compartmentalize and see, yes, I'm upset, but also I do understand it's a game and she was
Yeah,
just doing what she had to do. Um, it's funny you say you're not a vulnerable person because and I know we see a very edited version of events, and so we're just being led by the way the program's been put together. But my impression of you as a viewer was that you changed throughout the season, not in a negative way. I don't mean that as a bad thing, but
yeah,
you early on, and I'll sort of get to this in a moment. You were one of the people I sort of thought you were going to make it to the end. I thought Donna, she knows what's going on.
yeah.
She's like really hardcore. She's making good assumptions about people. Like she's really in this. And actually, towards the second half, I thought you'd sort of softened quite a lot
Yeah.
and sort of not chilled out, but maybe become a bit more emotional. And is that like a fair assessment of things?
That is absolutely fair assessment. I think what happened was being on the journey and being away from the world and being with the people around you. You had to go with the game and you had to do things differently. And I think because I'd made some connections with people and those that are closest to me in my life, they do get to see, like different sides of me. 100% took me from surprise though in how you can make those quick connections. But yes, the first bit of the game, it was kind of like trying to do all those assumptions. But then as it got less and less, I think to be honest, I started to believe that I could make it to the end. Like I'd tell my husband and stuff, like I'm like, I'll see you in 3 days. There was no way that I was going to be making this through. There was nothing in me. It was so far out of my comfort zone. It wasn't funny.
Yeah.
And so then the further I got along, I started to believe more, which then I was kind of like, I need to do this a little bit differently. Like I looked through my journal because I journaled every day. And the second half of my journal is exactly what you said. There was more of, strategic. There was more of the game plan, but it was more about take a little bit more of a step back, by focusing more on Noel and focusing and not being involved in the dramas or not being a follower or
Mhm.
at the tables. Do your own thing. Kind of came back there. So yeah, that's absolutely a fair assumption.
I have a final few questions that are a bit broader. Well, one of them's a bit silly. The first is another listener question, and it's from the same user who had asked something else, and it's spelled SONHOANG 2975. This person asks, would you come back and do the Traitors again?
Oh, I think if I did, I'd want to be a trader.
Hmm.
I d
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not off the table. So, if there's an All Stars one or a runners up one or a chance to redeem yourself, maybe Australia can come and have a chat with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if there was something else, it's definitely not off the cards because you learn so much from it and it really is an amazing experience.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion. People often talk to me about All Stars versions, but I like this idea of a redemption or a
Yeah,
runners up season. That's a
that's right.
cool
Yeah.
way of looking at things. Another fairly trivial question from me to finish that I meant to ask other players this and I keep forgetting. Was someone in the show really using a false name? Because it was one of the statements in the very first mission that was apparently true. Who was not using their own name? What did that mean?
Someone was using, I believe, their middle name as their
Okay.
name. Like sometimes you've got two names and you're
Yeah,
preferred by another name.
sure.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was.
Okay. Do we have any idea who this is?
I believe it was. I'm not allowed to say who it was.
It's up to you.
I think it was Molly, but I can't be completely correct on that.
Okay, okay.
Can't be completely sure on it, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it was Molly using another name, maybe.
Yeah, it's really not an important question. It's just something that
Yeah.
every now and then comes back to me, and I think, hey, I never got a
Yeah.
resolution to
The
that.
one question that we absolutely wish people had answered was, is there people related or in a relationship in the game? No one went and stood at that mine, and all of us had many, many conversations about it. People thought that Widemu and I are brother and sister. Maybe we are. I guess we're never going to tell people until our
Mm.
archive photos come out.
Oh no, now you've raised like all sorts of other questions. Oh no, you shouldn't have said that. Um, lastly, I have to apologize because on the episode four, well, the second episode of this podcast season, when I was talking about episode four of the show, I read out a question that I believed was from a sort of just a podcast listener, not realizing it was you who had sent the question. So I was saying we have a listener question from someone called Mrs. Donna Officer, and it was actually you, Donna. You asked a question about for David and I, my co-host. You asked us to predict our top five players. And funnily, I went back and listened to that episode to what I had said. I predicted Mike, you, Kat, Bailey, and Ben. So I got two out of those did end up in the top five, you and Bailey, funnily enough. And David's five predictions were Kat, Mike, Jane, also you, and funnily enough, Whitney, who then got banished, I think, the very next episode. So
Yeah.
we did answer your question. I just didn't
Oh,
realize it was from you.
excellent. Yeah, it's me.
So there you go. Now we are almost at the end of our conversation. We have to finish the game that we've been playing, where we've been trying to deceive one
Hmm.
another. Before we get there, a couple of things. Donna, where can we find you online if we want to follow you on Instagram or wherever? Where are you?
Yes, come and follow me at Mrs. Donna Officer on Instagram and come watch my journey. Come follow me. Come and ask me questions yourself if you want as well. I'm happy to answer them. But yeah, come watch my journey.
Brilliant. I'm glad you said that because sometimes people ask me about the players, or it's like, oh, can you ask them this? And I love doing that in the interviews. But often I'll say to people, you could probably just send them a message on Instagram. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer. So
Yeah.
so that's good. Uh, Another reminder just for listeners, you can vote for the Trader, a Traitors podcast, in this year's British Podcast Awards in the Listener's Choice category. Voting is free online. It's very simple. You just have to spell the name of the podcast correctly, Traidar, and it will pop up from a list. To sort of drop down menu appears. And the link to the voting page is on the podcast social media. I'll put it in the episode description. If you just Google or use any other search engine to find British Podcast Awards Listener's Choice, it's really easy to find online. After you vote, you just have to check your email and confirm your vote is counted. And I would just really appreciate all of the loyal Trader listeners to go online. I have no idea how many votes it takes to be shortlisted for this, but if even half the people who subscribe on YouTube and Spotify and everything headed to that website and voted, I think there might be a chance. So, Donna, we have been playing the Trader Traitor. We've been trying to deceive and betray one another throughout this interview. Firstly, were you dishonest with me at any point? Have you told me a lie?
Yes.
Okay. I too have deceived you. Or maybe I haven't deceived you because maybe you caught me. I tried to lie to you as well. Do you have any idea what I may have lied about?
I have a suspicion, but it could be also that I have really bad memory on what actually happened in one of the episodes on one of my votes. So I probably lied to you back to keep the podcast going when you told me that I voted for Mike.
Uh, I if that's not true, I didn't mean it. I That wasn't an intentional lie. I'm sure you voted for Mike the episode he got banished. So I don't think that is a lie. If you
Maybe I've got
listeners may
really
correct me.
bad memory then. So no, I don't know then. Oh, maybe your deception to me is that you didn't actually put me in the top five. Your prediction.
Uh, you are very close. I did put you in my top five, so that was not a
Ah,
lie.
damn it.
As did
Bailey.
David. I put Bailey was in my top five as well. I
Okay.
lied a little bit about David's predictions.
Okay.
David did
See,
also
nearly
predict
there
you,
then.
and my lie was like the very last thing I said before I asked you about your social media. I said that David predicted Whitney would get to the top five, and then she was banished.
Yeah.
David actually didn't say that. I just
All
last minute
right.
added in
So
something else.
we was close. I was so
You were
close
in the
then
right
about the
area.
predictions. So
Yeah.
close.
So that's pretty good. That's like a half a
Okay.
win. Um,
Okay.
I I'm gonna guess your lie. You know, I most of our interview, I couldn't think of anything. So more the
Okay.
second half, I wrote down a few things. So
Yeah.
I I wondered if when you said you were a sore and that meant that doing the dissection was easy, could that have been a lie? Or when I'm gonna go for. You said that Jason lives 15 minutes from you, and I wondered if that was a lie.
That is true.
Oh, that's not your. Okay.
That's
Well,
not my lie. He really does live pretty close to me.
that's good.
And
I'm
so
glad
does
that Jason
Widemu
lives
as
close.
well. Yeah,
Oh.
Jason Widemu lived pretty close as well.
Well, you're gonna have to tell me. What did you lie about?
You should have gone with your first choice.
I
I can't sew to save myself. People know me
was.
cannot sew. I get my mother to still go and sew my clothes for me, and I'm 40. Anything that I do is definitely not a sew, and I didn't do biology. So the whole thing about that mouse was a lie.
Oh my God.
So you were so close. So
I
you
was
get a
really
half win as
close.
well. We both get a half
We
win.
are both right. I'm happy
Yeah,
with that. We
we
both
both
did
get a
pretty well
half
there.
win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Happy. Very happy. Um, Donna, thank you so much for joining me on the Trader today. It was really, really great chatting to you. I hope your first podcast interview has felt worthwhile.
It definitely has. So you can go down in my book of ticking off another thing that I'm doing for the first time. So, and I will send it around to lots of people to watch it.
Excellent. I also selfishly hope that no other podcast you ever do lives up to this. So,
I'll
thank
let you
you.
know.
Thank you so much, Donna. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for the invite.
Bye. Hello, Trader listeners. I had a great time talking to Donna. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. She was absolutely lovely. As always, you can leave reviews and you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or wherever you're not listening. Just subscribe everywhere: iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. After my plea last episode, there have first for reviews. There have been some really lovely comments on various platforms. I thought I would read a few out to say thank you. Connie on Spotify left a comment saying, "Love your Traitors podcast and your hosting style. My first go-to after each Traitors episode. Keep up the great work. Love from Canada." So thanks, Connie in Canada. Nikki, I think this was also on Spotify, said, "Great." This was a comment on my interview with Andrew. And Nikki said, "Great hearing Andrew's view. Fab to hear his view on bullying. Would love to hear from Noel and Bree to get their views on those awesome early episodes." Well, Nikki, you're in luck because Noel is on his way to the podcast, not literally. Another Nikki Anglesey. I don't know if this is her surname or if she's from the place Anglesey. Nikki Anglesey on YouTube said, "Mike was a fantastic traitor, great interview," and not on the interview with Mike from last week. A couple of listeners also got in touch to explain to me that David and I had been talking about this place we thought it was a place in New Zealand. This shows how ignorant we are. And we were spelling it Aotearoa. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's not a place in New Zealand. It is the Maori name for New Zealand. So I'm glad I know that now. Anna on YouTube said, I loved my weekly tradition of watching the episodes and then listening to you two. It was one of my favourite seasons, and I can't wait for more. See ya! So thanks, Anna, and I hope you're enjoying the interviews with the contestants. More to come. Someone with a great username on TikTok, Miss Sassy Sauce, said, just wanted to say I thoroughly enjoy your podcast. Been listening for a few seasons and I miss it when you're on a break. Can't wait to listen to the interviews. So thank you. Hope you're enjoying the interviews. I'm enjoying conducting them. I'm having a great time talking to the contestants. And have also had another couple of star ratings on Spotify, pushing us up to 86 now. And the overall rating has gone up from 4.7 to 4.8. I feel like I'm reading out the charts on the radio, up to 4.8. That makes no sense. My mission is still to get the podcast to 100 reviews on Spotify by the end of this season, by the end of these contestant interviews. So if you've been listening this whole time, and maybe you even listen on a different platform like YouTube or Castbox, if you have a Spotify login, you would be doing me a huge, huge favor by just opening Spotify, leaving a quick little star rating. You don't need to write anything. You just can click 5 stars, or 4 stars, or 3 stars. 5 stars would be amazing. It's good because it helps the podcast just sort of stay higher in search results and helps new listeners find it much more easily if it has more star ratings. And that keeps the podcast alive and it helps me create more content for you. So it's all a big magical circle of podcast life. If you have any questions or thoughts on the episodes, anything you want me to ask the contestants who are coming on, check out the social media. Check out Instagram and X in particular to see who is coming up on the podcast. The username on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube is at the Traitors Podcast, or on X it's a little bit different. It's at the Traitors Pod. You can also email me at thetradarpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit the coffee page if you feel like donating a one-off a little amount of money, whatever you like, to help me keep the podcast going. That's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. The link is in the episode description. And lastly, I'm going to keep saying this until the closing date. The British Podcast Awards are open for voting in the Listener's Choice category, and it would be amazing if you went on there and voted for The Trader, a Traitors podcast. Until next time, stay faithful and keep us on your Trader.